Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Following on from our last video at Buildwas Abbey, a few miles down the road we visit the market town of Much Wenlock, which for over 700 years has a history that stretches back much further. But it's more the impressive yet tranquil remains of the priory ruins that we are here today to take an explore around, and we'd like to invite you to join us whilst we walk Wenlock Priory. An Anglo-Saxon monastery was founded here around 680 AD by King Merewalh of Mercia, whose abbess daughter was hailed as a saint. Her relics were miraculously rediscovered here in 1101, attracting both pilgrims and prosperity to the priory. Remains of this medieval priory survive today, reflecting the Cluniac love of elaborate decoration, where parts of the great 13th century church still stand high. Following the Norman conquest around 1080 AD, Roger de Montgomery founded a Cluniac priory on the existing site. It is believed that the original double monastery consisted of two entirely separate churches, and archaeological evidence suggests that the Normans founded their new church on the site of the male monastery. When I mentioned that the priory was a double monastery, it meant that unlike most other priories and abbeys, Wenlock housed both men and women. There were two separate churches, one for the monks and one for the nuns, equipped with suites of residential buildings. Merewalh's daughter, Milburga, was installed as its abbess for the female community. She became famous for the miracles that she performed. She allegedly brought a dead boy back to life, banished geese that were destroying her crops, and made her veil float on a sunbeam. She was abbess for over 30 years, and her connections with royalty probably helped the monastery to acquire land and property. She died around 722 and 730 and became a saint after her death. Some parts of the nave and transept still stand, which we were able to visit. We are now entering a section of the nave's south aisle, which survives in good condition. The west end of this southern nave aisle supports a 3-bay chamber, with the chamber being only accessible from a door at first story level in the west range of the cloister. What's interesting is that the purpose of the chamber is one of Wenlock's mysteries. It's been argued that it was a chapel dedicated to St Michael, but there is no altar step or any evidence of any other features. Whatever its purpose, it was clearly a significant space and sufficiently important. One of my favourite views here at Wenlock is through the doors and to the cloister. The cloister is the heart of monastic life. In the medieval ages, this cloister would have had 4 covered walks around a central garden, which surrounds the monk's washing house to its left. The topiary here is a fine collection of skilled horticultural craftsmanship, and really do add to its tranquil beauty. Each of the columns has a different animal or bird, and they sit in a long rank, which makes them look magnificent when you first see them on your way round. It might not show up on the camera just how impressive these creations are, but later when we pan the camera around, you'll notice some of the animals that they've shaped, which are worth looking out for. The most impressive structure that survives to this day is the base of the unusual octagonal lavabo. This huge water vessel was built around 1220 and used by the monks to wash their hands before eating in the nearby refectory. It was discovered beneath a mound of earth and debris in 1878, along with fragments from the upper basements and several columns and capitals. It was embellished with 12th century carvings depicting Christ and the Apostles. Freestanding lavabos of this kind are rarely seen in the United Kingdom. I don't know if it was the good weather that we had whilst we were visiting here, but the atmosphere and the calmness of the day really brought the priory to life. All of the small touches and how well kept this site was just a wonderful thing to experience. After visiting so many priories and abbeys, most of them are very ruinous, and it can sometimes make it hard to imagine just how a room might have looked without staging. But Wenlock's chapter house needs no embellishments. The entrance to the chapter house from the cloister is through a beautifully decorated Norman arched doorway, set between two arched windows. The stone carvings here and patterns really do highlight its extravagance and of course its importance. And once inside, you're firstly drawn to the very impressive intersecting blind arcading covering all of the walls. The chapter house was built in around 1140. This is the place where the monks and the prior met each morning to discuss priory business and to issue punishments for disobedience. Much of the elaborate arcading and the detailed stone carving is typical of Cluniac buildings, can still be seen on its interior walls. Towards the back and on the right, a blocked doorway can be seen, which once led down to a treasury underneath the stairs. You have to wonder how the church would have once looked if this much skill and money was spent decorating just the walls inside this chapter house. Lining the walls were stone benches where the monks would sit and listen to their abbot. Following on from the chapter house and to the monks' procession entrance into the church from the east of the cloister, we were able to have a look at the library. Unfortunately, it's now completely fenced off to protect the tiles and the tombs inside, but you're still able to have a look like we did. The room placement of the library was a pretty standard practice for the storage of books in monasteries. Up until the Middle Ages of the 12th century, books would always be kept in chests. But by the 1150s, there were arched shelves that began to appear. Wenlock's library is more like a walk-in cupboard. The library floor is now paved with 13th century tiles and houses two tomb effigies of former priors. The tiles have come from different locations within the priory, but were laid here to form the present pavement in the 20th century. We're now making our way to the best preserved area of the monastic church, here at the south transept. It forms part of the new church built under Prior Humbert and was more than likely constructed during the 1230s. The sheer height really does highlight its once magnificence. You can only imagine how beautiful the stained glass would have looked in the now empty shells. In the west wall of this south transept, there are still the remains of an elaborate lava, which was an unusual and rare feature. This lava would have been used by the monks to wash their feet before entering into the choir. Some parts of the Priory's Infirmary and Prior's Lodging can still be seen to the east of the cloister and next to the chapter house. These were converted into private residences after 1540 and aren't open to visitors. Nevertheless, the buildings are really timeless and beautiful to look at whilst you're here. The former infirmary hall dates from around 1160 and was originally a single volume structure, though an internal floor was since inserted in the later Middle Ages. To itself was a courtyard, which was quite similar to the cloister, though with just one covered walk alongside the hall. Our explore leads us back to the remains of the church. The Priory church was rebuilt on a larger scale between 1220 and 1260, following a cruciform or cross-shaped plan. The church would have been the main building of the monastery. Wenlock was one of the finest monastic churches in England and was over 107 metres long. The Cluniac order put a lot of emphasis on communal worship. It took over 40 years to build, with construction commencing around the 1200s, and it received many endowments from Henry VIII, who was a frequent visitor to Wenlock. As you look down the length of the church, you can still see the remains of pillars on each side of the central aisle. Beyond the transept is the eastern end of the church, which contained the monks' choir and high altar. Further work was undertaken during the 14th century, when a lady chapel was added at the east end of the church. The late 15th century saw the completion of a heptagonal sacristy and the prior's house. Although no evidence remains, it is believed that the shrine of St Milberg existed at the far east end. Despite the ruinous nature of Wenlock Priory, the fragments that survive are rich and diverse, often highly ornate, and are well preserved. Located in a beautiful corner of the Shropshire countryside, on the edge of a very picturesque village, this is an easy site to recommend to you all watching. It was quiet when we visited and we almost had the whole priory to ourselves. It's a wonderful place to visit, and it takes very little imagination to see what this place might have been when it first prospered. This is quite literally Shropshire's hidden gem. So that's it for this week, and we really hope that you've enjoyed our visit and it's given some inspiration for a future visit for yourselves. If you have enjoyed it, please be sure to hit that like button, click on the notification bell to never miss another video, and hit the subscribe button for more content. We want to say a big thank you to our pinned family here on YouTube, being channel members or over on Patreon. If you would like to help and support us further, then please consider joining one of our tiers here as members, or have a look in the description box for links to our Patreon. So we'll see you on the next one. Till next time.